an example of this is I recently had to do something very, very heartbreaking for me. I had to resign as the elected governor for Dudley Group of Hospitals on the Hospital Trust. I was elected governor for Dudley North. I was extremely proud of that position. I really care about the NHS. My family is not a wealthy family, and we've had reason to rely on the NHS. And they've done great things. They're not perfect, but they've done great things. And I thought when I got the chance to get elected to that position 3 years ago, I'd help them. I knew tough times were ahead, costs and spending implications, difficult times ahead. I thought, well, I'll try and help through. But all during that time, all that had actually happened was that the Governor's Board had become more and more a rubber stamping exercise. And people were simply governors for the kudos of it. Certain local councillors were on there because they just like to say, oh, I love the NHS, I'm on the Governor's Board. What do you do? Well, I say yes. Well, there was one issue that kept on cropping up more than any other. And in the area of Dudley where I'm from, there's a lot of people who are struggling in this recession. And it's about the hospital parking charges. Now, the PFI deal at that hospital means that the vast majority, until recently, all of the money from the car parks goes straight into the pockets of the shareholders of the PFI provider on a fixed term contract lasting decades with no competition whatsoever. It's legalised theft. It's taxing the poor and the infirm. It's immoral. It's sickening. Our National Health Service is something we're all proud of, but we are being put in a position where, because previous governments decided they wanted nice shiny hospitals, oh, let's be boastful about our great new projects, well, that's fabulous. And look, they're not even on the balance sheet because we've effectively mortgaged out the future for 40 to 50 years of basically saying to a private firm, print money from it. And when it was announced, and we didn't even get a discussion on this, that those prices for that parking were going up yet again, I decided I couldn't go ahead with it. I resigned in protest against this and made a stand. Got into the press, the media looked at it. The people around Dudley, by and large, have flocked to support that stance because somebody has actually said no. Somebody, rather than just rubber stamping it, rather than just leaning back saying, well, what can we do? They've said no. Now, I haven't stopped it. It was an impotent gesture in many ways, but it shows that I, and by extension, because I made sure everyone knew I was with UKIP, give a damn. And somebody does, and that's so rare, that someone actually stands up for something and gives a damn. It's an example of it. And people are prepared to have an open door and believe that we're sincere. And the Tories, particularly, haven't got that. When I was in a previous existence, and I hold up my hands now and apologise to all around, I think there's some other past sinners amongst us, I was a Conservative. It was a mistake on my part. But I stood for election in a part of Dudley that was had some difficulties. And I went to a woman's door and I knocked on the door and said, what's your problems, can I help? And she says, yeah, we've got rats. Oh, in your back garden? No. Running through the house. And I'm concerned, excuse me, I'm concerned that they're going to hurt the baby. And only the other day I had to chase one away from the pram. I was like, okay, well, that's appalling. Right, I'll see what I can do. And I got onto the council and I got them to send someone in to look and to try and deal with the problem. And I knocked back on the door afterwards and said, sorted that out now, everything okay? She said, yeah, yes, great. I said, well, I'm your local Conservative candidate, I hope you'll remember me at the election. She said, no, you're all the same. I'm not going to bother. Because it doesn't matter. There are some good Tories, some good Labour, some good Liberal, obviously. But people have got so jaded with their lies and spin, they don't believe them. Even when they do something quantifiably good, they don't believe them anymore. On the other hand, When I was standing for the Police and Crime Commissioner elections, I went to lots of hustings, 13 of them, over a 2-month period. And I went to some interesting places, spoke to some interesting people, and people who've never really encountered UKIP before. And I was delighted that they are ready to hear good things about us. They're ready to believe us. At Handsworth, there was a gentleman who came up to me after the hustings, after I'd answered a lot of questions, and I hadn't played to the gallery. I'd said it like it was. This gentleman was a very impressive man. He was a very large, very strong and powerful man. And he was a West Indian chap. And he called me over. And I thought, better be a bit wary here. You know, I mean, UKIP have been called some horrible names. People try to imply that we're racist. So this man might have an issue. And he said, "Oi, you, Mr. UKIP, come here." I thought, okay. And I went over and said, "Yes, sir. Yeah, how can I help you?" He said, "I've looked at you and I've heard what you've got to say and I've looked in your eyes." He said, "Of all the people here, you're telling the truth. You mean it. UKIP means it, don't they?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm going to vote for you. I'm going to vote for you because you're sincere and you're not just like another party, a political party, making up lies, playing to us. You're telling me how you really see it. Whether I like it or not, you're telling me." He loved it. I went to a mosque, and one of the elders came to me after the debate that we'd had in the mosque, and he approached me and he said, "Sir, I must speak to you." And I said, "Oh, yes, how can I help?" He said, "Your leader is often on the television." And I said, "I just want to say," he said, "I want to say one thing. Mr. Etheridge is a wonderful man because he tells the truth. He stands up for certain standards. And if you think about it, a lot of the ethnic communities and new and immigrant communities around our areas have very strong traditional standards, just like a great many of working class communities and others. And nobody stands for those standards anymore. Well, one party does. And we're here. And people are reaching out for that. So what we have now is a great opportunity, a fantastic opportunity. The door is open. People are desperate for another option to clear away what we have. We've got a Labour Party who for 13 years opened the doors on mass immigration on a level that no one had ever seen before. They did not give a damn about the results of it. They wanted mass immigration to this country. And what's the result? Mass record youth unemployment. Whole areas where the cohesion in society isn't quite as it should be. People who were immigrated here in their families in the 40s and 50s and 60s complaining that the British way of life is changing out of control, out of all proportion and thought. And what do the Labour Party now say? "Oh, we got it wrong. If you vote for us now, we'll control immigration." And then you've got a Conservative Party who focus on windmills and partnerships, of course, with those highly reputable and trustworthy friends of theirs in the Lib Dems, who provide the hot air that goes into these windmills. In reality, there is not a cigarette paper's difference between these people. There is a difference of presentation, a great difference of presentation, but when it comes down to the reality of what the facts of those policies are, there's hardly any difference. And that's why, in places like Eastleigh, we take votes from the Tories, we take votes from Labour, we take votes from the Liberals, and what's more, we get people to come out and vote who haven't voted in 20 years, because it's something to vote for. These other parties, all they have to offer is a lust for power. It's a disgusting, loathsome, overbearing desire simply to be in power at all costs. They have no principles whatsoever, and everybody knows it. We offer morals and principles. Not saying that us as human beings are perfect. I'm certainly not. There might be some of you here who are, but I'm not. But we stand for a cause that is highly principled and believes in certain standards. If we put aside all other considerations for the next 2 years and focus on council elections, European elections, Westminster elections, by the end of that 2 years, we could have started to change everything. This is the moment, this is the time, it's now. If we have personal squabbles or differences between ourselves, put them off. 2 years' time, you can start disliking people again. For now, let's get on with each other. Let's work as a team, and I mean that across the whole of UKIP, everywhere. You don't have to be bosom buddies with someone, but you know you work together. Your personal ambitions and other priorities are secondary towards saving what's left of the country. I get approached quite often by people who say these kind of things. I'm sure you'll have heard it as well. Elderly gentleman came up to me in Eastleigh. He said he'd fought for his country back in his day. Now, the only way to try and protect and fight for the country was for him to vote UKIP. And the only way for us to do our bit was to get out there and campaign hard. And this gentleman would not let go of me, and the passion was there in his eyes. And he was saying, for goodness sake, do this. We're relying on you. And it stuck with me. As I know a lot of you will feel the same. When you get someone who's that passionate and that desperate for something to change for the better, and they're relying on you, and no one else, just you, it stirs something. It does with me. And I know it does with other people in this room. I know it does. And when I think about that, and I think about members of our armed forces made redundant by text message, and I think about no bobbies on the beat, and I think about an NHS that's struggling and is being ripped apart and pulled to pieces by private finance agreements, and I think about pensioners whose savings are being made to nothing by the economic policy and the financial things that are going on at the moment, and I look at the lack of hope for young people, and you add it all together, I think, my goodness me, haven't we got a responsibility? And sometimes it can be quite overbearing, this responsibility, and you can feel it right inside. I know I do. I feel it, it sounds corny, but I feel it in my heart, this is a responsibility. But it's only us who can do it. And as much as we've got Nigel and other people, Diane, Paul, great people at the top, there's middle layers, there's grassroots, and we're all just as important because it's a team. So folks, I know you feel the same as me about this. I think it's crucial we don't let anyone distract us, anything sidetrack us. We go out there, and we go out there to win, and we take seats and we take back our country, and we do what's right, and we replace the vile government by politically correct social engineering and focus groups that we've been subjected to for these last few decades, and replace it with some morality, some principles, some standards, and the things that made Britain great. And in this company, I'm sure that I'm amongst people who will be there with me as we make sure this all happens. And thank you again. It's been a pleasure to be amongst you. Thank you.